Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Should You Play, where I show you some spoiler-free gameplay and give you my thoughts after playing new games for a few hours, while also highlighting and checking out at least one of the PlayStation Plus games for each month. In this video I'm playing Little Nightmares 3, the third installment in the miniature horror platformer. I've been a big fan of the Little Nightmares games for a while now, and I've especially loved how each one has felt different without straying too far from the formula. This is the first game in the series that was made by Supermassive Games rather than Tarsier Studios though, as they're working on another game at the moment, and while it's still a great game, it has some notable issues, so let's just talk about it. In Little Nightmares 3, you play as either Lo or Alone, two children who wake up in a barren wasteland and attempt to make their way through a series of unsettling environments to reach safety. Much like in the past Little Nightmares games, the narrative keeps things vague and interpretive, relying on atmosphere and imagery rather than explicit dialogue or exposition. Where Little Nightmares 3 stands out narratively is in how much personality it gives to Lo and Alone through their animations. They're more expressive than 6 or Mono were, curious, hesitant, and protective of each other in a way that comes across naturally through small movements. You can tell that they look out for each other just by the way that they react, and even something as simple as shining your flashlight at your partner's face will get a subtle response. Like the previous titles, Little Nightmares 3 is a puzzle platformer with survival horror elements, meaning that you're solving environmental puzzles to move forward while trying to stay alive. Most puzzles revolve around interacting with the environment, moving objects, or timing your actions carefully to avoid being caught. In this game, however, each character has a tool that's unique to them. Lo carries a bow, and Alone wields a wrench. You'll need to enter a separate mode to use them, which temporarily disables jumping and most other interactions, limiting your movement until you put the tool away and go back into a sort of platforming mode. Just because they have tools, though, doesn't mean that you can take on every enemy in their path, as most creatures shrug off your attacks completely, so stealth is still the best option for survival when you're facing larger foes. Depth perception has always been a bit tricky in this series, but it's more noticeable here, even more so during sequences that involve gliding or platforming across wide gaps, since there's often nothing in the background or foreground to help judge distance. There are some quality of life improvements, however, such as keys automatically going into your inventory instead of you having to carry them while platforming, and checkpoints are generally more forgiving outside of the very end of the game. The game also adds light traversal assistance, making it surprisingly difficult to fall off of narrow beams or ledges, even if you try to. It's a small change, but it helps reduce frustration during some of the tighter platforming sequences. Little Nightmares 3 is the first game in the series with optional multiplayer features, and while that's a huge addition for the series, the execution is a bit mixed. The game includes the Friends Pass, which allows you to play online with someone who doesn't own the game, however, there's no local couch co-op as of right now. The game director explained in an interview before the launch that they chose not to include couch co-op because it would break the intended immersion and atmosphere, but honestly, I'm not sure I agree with that at all, especially since the game recommends that you be able to communicate with your partner. The lack of couch co-op is especially disappointing given that there's no matchmaking either. You have to have a friend available to play with online, and even then, the game doesn't support cross-generational play, so if you're on a PS5 and your friend's on a PS4, you'll need to install the PS4 version to play together. In single-player mode though, you can call your partner over or grab their hand to lead them to different areas if they don't follow you naturally, but it doesn't always work as intended because sometimes they just won't come over at all. Additionally, actions that require both characters, like pushing a door or lifting an object, can also be hit or miss, as you'll often find yourself waiting for the AI to realize what you're doing before they finally join in. On top of that, there were a few times where my partner didn't follow me at all, forcing me to restart from the last checkpoint. On the positive side, your AI companion occasionally moves ahead and solves sections before you if you're stuck, which can be helpful for finding the right path if you find yourself unsure as to what progress is. Still, the overall flow of the game slows down significantly with an AI partner. The pacing just feels off, and the constant waiting breaks the rhythm that made the earlier games so tight and fluid. Playing with an actual co-op partner who you can talk to directly fixes most of these issues though, which makes it all the more frustrating that couch co-op isn't included. In terms of horror, Little Nightmares 3 might be tied with 2 as the creepiest of the 3 games for me, especially when it comes to enemy design. The first time one of the creatures appeared close to the screen, it actually got a reaction out of me, and while the earlier games had stronger environmental tension, this one leans harder into unsettling enemy designs. The environmental lighting is darker overall as well, but it's used effectively to heighten the mood, and the ambient sound design is excellent, full of whispers, creaks, and the unnerving crawl of insects. The series has always excelled at using scale to its advantage, making you feel small and powerless, and Little Nightmares 3 continues that trend beautifully, even with the inclusion of weapons. The haptic feedback adds another layer. Your controller pulses with heartbeat-like vibrations and environmental rumbles, and as I've said in past reviews, when it's implemented well, it can add a lot to the immersion. Technically, Little Nightmares 3 runs really well. You can switch between beauty and performance modes, but even on beauty, I didn't have any performance-based issues. Outside of the occasional AI hiccup and one issue with the haptic feedback going for too long, there weren't any serious bugs either, and load times between deaths are short, which makes restarting sections painless. Overall, across 2 different playthroughs, I'm happy to report that the game is in great condition. Little Nightmares 3 definitely feels different, and while I still enjoyed it overall, I think it's the weakest of the 3 games. The biggest disappointment is the lack of local co-op, and it's genuinely hard to understand why it wasn't included, especially when there's no matchmaking or cross-generational play either. I think that's gonna turn a lot of players away from this one, especially since playing solo with the AI companion just doesn't have the same rhythm or tension as the earlier games. That said, if you can play online with a friend or get lucky with the AI, you'll likely have a much better experience with the game. The core gameplay is still strong, the presentation is solid, they've added a lot of great new features, and despite a few frustrating mechanics, it captures the series' unsettling charm incredibly well. My first playthrough took a little over 4 hours, which is about the same length as the previous games, and while I do think 1 and 2 are stronger titles overall, this one still has its moments and is worth checking out if you enjoyed the others. As always though, this is just my opinion. Whether you've just fallen into the nightmare or you're already making your way to safety, let me know in the comments what you think of Little Nightmares 3. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.